Hello and welcome to Oschersleben in Germany, ahead of our coverage of round 9 of the 2019 TCR Europe series. You're very welcome, everyone. Welcome along. It's Mark James in the commentary box for this 9th round of the series. And if you've been with us so far this weekend, we've been live streaming free practice and qualifying, which is a return to the old days, if you like, and lots of positive comments coming in, so we're very grateful. However, not good news for our South American viewers. Santiago Urrutia is still in the pit lane ahead of this race. We'll talk about that more in a moment. But the weather has also been drawing a few comments over the last hour or so. After free practice 2, which was in beautiful blue skies and temperatures of around 18 degrees. It's got a little bit warmer, as you just saw, but we did have a shower of rain, and so there were some concerns that the race would be declared wet. Not so. You've just seen Andreas Beckmann on pole for the first time in TCR Europe, and there you saw Dan Lloyd alongside Andreas on the grid. 28 cars entered for this event. You will see, however, on the entry list, 29 cars were entered. The one non-starter, as we've been saying all weekend so far, that was John Filippi in the Renault. So we're down to 28, and of those 28, all 28 should take the start. And I cross my fingers as I say that, because, as I say, you saw Santiago Urrutia in the pits a moment or so ago. All sorts of problems with cars breaking radiators here. You'll see as we go through the lap that the turn at turn 9, the chicane, there's been some modification to the corner since probably about March or April, and extra nodules, I guess, have been put on the inside of the corner. And quite a few drivers have hit those and broken their radiators, so much so that we're really running low, particularly on Volkswagen radiators. No such problems for that pole man, though. Brilliant lap, and also a TCR lap record for Andreas Beckmann, who was always positive coming here after a very successful test here over the winter. Both he and his sister Jessica made it through into Q2. Andreas on pole, Jessica P5. Dan Lloyd, it looked for a while as though Dan was going to be on pole quick yesterday in free practice, but Dan Lloyd in the Brutal Fish Honda, second on the grid alongside Andreas. And then qualified third quickest, Santiago Urrutia, you saw a moment ago in the pit lane. Fingers crossed he will be able to start from the pit lane. One thing I do have to tell you, though, if you are looking at the results, I'm being told in my headphones that Urrutia's problem is another radiator issue. And so, long faces at the team. Now, does that mean that Urrutia will be able to take the start? We'll see in a few minutes' time. The other Audi on the entry list, that of Gilles Magnus in the Belgian junior team, Audi RS3 LMS, run by Come To You Racing. That incurred a 3-place grid penalty after the previous round at the Red Bull Ring. Yes, Santiago Urrutia has made it away, and so will start from the pit lane. Not ideal, we know, but at least he will take the start of this race. As I was saying, a 3-place grid penalty for Gilles Magnus, qualified 5th, but will start this race from 8th on the grid. That is Nelson Pontiatisi. He starts from position 4 on the grid, although, of course, the place alongside him on row 2 will be empty. And then on row 3 will be Andreas Beckmann's sister, Jessica Beckmann. Now, it's interesting, Jessica, Andreas, and Dan Lloyd all competed for West Coast Racing in TCR UK last year, and Dan Lloyd was coaching both Andreas and Jessica. And we have the situation now where Andreas is P1, Dan is P2, and Jessica is P5. The two Beckmanns both in target competition Hyundais, and Dan Lloyd in the Brutal Fish Honda. There then, the first 4 rows of the grid, Andreas Beckmann and Dan Lloyd, Santiago Urrutia, who will now start from pit lane alongside Nelson Pontiatisi, Jessica Beckmann and Dominic Baumann, new entry in the target competition Hyundai. Tom Coronel, there is Gilles Magnus, I mentioned, starting from P8, Josh Files and Alex Morgan. That'll be the front row of the grid for race 2. Gianni Morbidelli and Luca Engstler, we'll talk more about in a moment. Matteo Homola and Luca Filippi, Nathan Biel and Aurelien Comte in the Peugeot. Davidovski in the Honda, Kajaya in the Cupra, Potti in the Volkswagen, Jimmy Claret, and then Jolt Szabo and Julien Brichet, Ollie Kangas and Teddy Claret, and then back towards the back of the grid, Abdullah Ali Al-Khelaifi in the Cupra and Tamas Tenka. Also joining the grid is Sylvain Puissier in the Team Claret Sport Peugeot, and then right at the back of the grid, Dan Lloyd's teammate in the Brutal Fish Hondas, Martin Rieber. So then, green flag lap underway, and I can bring you up to speed with some of the dramas that we saw in free practice 2 that we weren't quite aware of. Alex Morgan, who'll start race 2 tomorrow on pole, he stopped on track with a broken wheel hub. That's obviously been fixed. He's out on the grid. For Luca Engstler, it was a steering rack, and so the team has obviously changed that. There is Alex Morgan in the number 5 Wolf Power Racing Cupra. And so it'll be Morgan on pole for race 2 with Josh Files alongside him. Files, though, was also telling me that he's still got a problem with the Hyundai. He broke the subframe yesterday during free practice 1. The team weren't able to fix it in time for FP2, did fix it overnight, but he was saying that he's having trouble getting power down, and also the car, when he turns in, the car is skipping across the track, and it's really unsettling. He said, doesn't matter if I'm on new tyres, used tyres, whatever, it's still difficult to get the power down and also difficult to steer. So will that cause problems for our Drivers' Championship leader? You're looking there at the point situation, and no points for the first 5 in our championship standings after qualifying, which means that it's still Files who leads the drivers' standings on 194 points from Luca Engstler on 158, Julien Brichet 3rd on 154, and Hommler 4th on 141. There is Matto Hommler. And just chatting to him after FP2, again, just shaking his head, saying we just couldn't get it together. So it is a Hyundai on pole, and it is one of the target competition cars. And then it's a Honda, then it's an Audi, in theory, although that Audi will start from the pit lane. Then another run of 3 Hyundais. And Dominic Baumann, I should mention, if you weren't with us earlier, Baumann joining the target competition team for the remainder of the season. Dominic Baumann from Austria. History so far in GTs, GT3 predominantly with Mercedes and BMW cars, but replacing Dusan Borkovic in the target competition team here in Germany, but also in Barcelona next month, and then for the final round of TCR Europe in Monza in Italy in October. Julien Brichet, not going to be a race winner, I would have thought, this time around. Winner of race 2 in the first 3 rounds of the season, but the weight being added because of the success of the Peugeots, and so Julien Brichet starting midfield, and it'll be very interesting to see the first run down to the left-hand turn 1. So start lights go on. A little premature as the green flag waves, and we are already underway as Andreas Beckmann moves across, but I think Dan Lloyd's got the line for the left-hander at turn 1. Lloyd defending and forcing Andreas to go wide, and so, yes, indeed, Dan Lloyd takes the advantage into turn 1. Oh, and there's contact already. And is that Jessica Beckmann? It is. Jessica Beckmann getting nudged out of the way, having improved from what was effectively 4th on the grid, getting nudged. It is Ponciatici ahead of Coronel. We thought that there would be issues at turn 1. And in fact, some bumping and banging going on in midfield, and contact with Aurélien Comte. Comte running wide and running with Davidovsky, I think, involved also. And it's also one of the M Racing Hyundais. We'll need to take a look back at that to see what had happened as the field streams through turn 7, and Gilles Magnus dropping down the order, involved in the incident as well. So a breathless first couple of corners in this 9th round of TCR Europe 2019. There is contact already under investigation between 26 and 12. There is Aurélien Comte parked up. He will play no further part, but will that mean a yellow flag or a safety car while he is recovered? 26 is Jessica Beckmann and 12 is Nelson Ponciatici. And Jessica appeared to make a brilliant start as Jimmy Claret in the 112 Peugeot. So already 2 of the Peugeots effectively out of contention. So then at the end of the first lap, Dan Lloyd leads from Andreas Beckmann, Nelson Ponciatici, Tom Coronel, then Josh Files as Al-Khelaifi comes back on, coming in through turn 14. After Josh Files in P5, it's Dominic Baumann in 6th, Luca Filippi 7th, Gianni Morbidelli is up to 8th, then Matto Homola, then Alex Morgan, David Kajaya, Jolt Szabo in 12th, Maxime Potti 13th, Julien Brichet is up to 14th, and Ollie Kangas takes currently the final of the point scoring positions. Look at that front left wheel of Luca Engstler, and that again is not good news for the unlucky Luca Engstler, who limps into the pits. The battle this is for 10th place between Alex Morgan and David Kajaya in the two Cupras. And also coming in is Nathan Biel with front body damage on the right-hand side of the car. And you can see flags waving to warn of debris on the track. Dan Lloyd then still ahead of Andreas Beckmann. We look further back. Gianni Morbidelli has done well. He started from 11th, as Kajaya just takes a little look up the inside of Morgan, but thinks better of it. But Morbidelli, another one of the drivers to have broken a radiator in Q1. And so even though he made it through to Q2, he didn't actually manage to set a competitive lap time. So both Morbidelli and Luca Engstler, 11th and 12th in the standings, and that's where they'll start both races. Luca Engstler, though, his race would appear already having been run, and you can see on the right-hand side of your screen, there is Engstler back on the ground, and behind him is Nathan Biel's car, as we look at the battle for the lead. So both these drivers, Dan Lloyd and Andreas Beckmann, looking for their first win of the season. That's the scrap between Josh Files and his new teammate Dominic Baumann for 5th. And no, indeed, Nathan Biel's out of the car, walking away in disgust. And so we will hopefully, when we can get some breathing time, have a look at some replays and see exactly what happened. Through the chicane they go. And it's the chicane, as I was saying earlier, that's been causing the problems. We look back at the start then. Now, we're looking for two things. We're looking, first of all, for Dan Lloyd, this brilliant move to just force Andreas to move wide. Brilliant start from Jessica Beckmann. Now, this is the moment. There's contact. We don't quite see the contact, unfortunately. And I'm told by my timing screen that multiple contacts on lap 1 are under investigation. Now, will we see this contact as they go into the left-hander at turn 1 between Ponziatisi? There it is, the tap between Ponziatisi and Jessica Beckmann. Ponziatisi himself getting a tap from Tom Coronel. And Jessica has dropped all the way down to P18 as a result of that. And that's the incident at the back of your shot that's sidelined Aurelien Comte. And for a while, it looked as though Victor Davidovski in the Honda was also involved. And we didn't see that earlier. That's Al Khelaifi in the Cupra, returning to the series after missing Red Bull Ring. And that's Jessica. And I don't think we saw that incident either. Jessica's still running down in 18th place, though. Yellow flag still at the chicane. There's Josh Files, followed in close attendance by Dominic Baumann. That's not a situation I would expect to change. Dominic Baumann joining the series for only the last 3 rounds. Josh, of course, in contention for the championship title. Alex Morgan still ahead of David Kajaya in 10th. Body damage too on Maxime Potti's Volkswagen. And Urrutia has made it up to 22nd place, just ahead of Lucas Engstler, with Engstler sporting battle damage. David Barry, team boss of Mira, as Gilles Magnus parks up and walks away. Ooh, and Andreas Beckmann has closed in on Dan Lloyd, the young Swedish driver, breathing all over the back of Dan Lloyd's Honda. However, it is extremely difficult to overtake here at Oschersleben. Although not if you were with us for TCR International back in 2017 for Gianni Morbidelli, who carved his way through the field from 10th on the grid in race 2. And there is Jessica. So very much mixed fortunes for the Beckman siblings. Jessica comes in and I would have thought retires, but her brother Andreas is scrapping with Dan Lloyd for the lead. Dan, though, has the experience of making his cars very wide when he needs them to be. And the pair opening up a gap now, 2 tenths, just under 3 tenths between Dan Lloyd and Andreas Beckman. Then there's a gap of around a second to Nelson Ponciatici. Another second or so back to Tom Coronel. Then it's Files and Baumann. Luca Filippi, Matteo Homola. Gianni Morbidelli has dropped to 9th now. Alex Morgan still 10th. Just checking my timing screen to see if there have been any penalties handed out. Nothing so far for the multiple contacts on lap 1. Things starting to settle down. But Andreas Beckman just tucked right up behind Dan Lloyd. And Morbidelli's retaken 8th from Matteo Homola, so that's possibly a battle we need to be watching. Morbidelli now P8, Matteo Homola P9. And Luca Enschler is just coming in again. Now, Ponciatici is also closing the gap. Was a good second or so down. But Andreas Beckman has just broken contact from Dan Lloyd and is now just starting to fall into the clutches of Nelson Ponciatici. And Luca Enschler is in. Something like 9 minutes of this race gone already. Dan Lloyd leads by just under 3 tenths of a second from Andreas Beckman. So Honda leads Hyundai. The other Hyundai of Nelson Ponciatici, the M Racing car, is in 3rd place. Another Honda, that of Tom Coronel, is 4th. Then it's 2 Hyundais, Files and Baumann, 5th and 6th. Luca Filippi, another Hyundai, is 7th. Gianni Morbidelli in the West Coast Racing Volkswagen is 8th. Ahead of yet another Honda, that of Matteo Homola in 9th, and then Alex Morgan 10th in the Cupra. Another Cupra, that of David Kajaya, is 11th. Zsolt Szabo in another Hyundai is in 12th. Maxime Potti, Volkswagen, 13th. Julien Brichet in the best of the Peugeots. And in fact, as I say that, there's a rippling going on. Alex Morgan has dropped down the order, so more problems, sadly, for Alex Morgan. He's dropped down to 17th, and I don't know why. As I was running through that order, I looked back at the screen and there's no sign of him. So Alex Morgan was 10th. So Morbidelli has moved up to 7th. Matteo Homola 8th. David Kajaya now 9th. Luca Filippi 10th. Then Szabo 11th. Potti 12th. Brichet 13th in the Peugeot. Ollie Kangas 14th. And Teddy Claret 15th. Ah, right. This was... Oh, Morgan getting completely nerfed out of the way by David Kajaya. And it seemed as though Morgan was the innocent party in all of that. And so, will that go to the stewards? I'd be surprised if it didn't. So, Morgan caught up. That's Luca Filippi in the BRC Hyundai. And Kajaya spinning the other Cupra around. That explains the dropping down the order of Alex Morgan, who's back down in 17th place after that incident, having been 10th. Our race leader, though, is still Dan Lloyd. 4 tenths now up on Andreas Beckman. And then it's something like 8 tenths back to Nelson Ponciatici. There is poor Jess, watching to see what brother Andreas can do in this race. Filippi up to 9th, Szabo up to 10th, Kajaya now is 11th. Points down to 15th, remember, as Tamas Tenka comes in the Zengo Cupra. Tenka was running around in 22nd place. Morgan is now in the pits as well. And I can see on my screen that Luca Engstler has at least left the pits, and so is back out again. And I don't think this is an exercise in saving tyres at all. This is a proper battle going on between these three. Dan Lloyd leading, Andreas Beckmann second, Nelson Ponciatici third, and then a slight gap of 1.2 seconds or thereabouts, as you can see, just coming into shot was Tom Coronel in fourth place. But Dan Lloyd really could do with winning here. There is Kajaya, and there is Jabo in the Mira car. Potty just behind, Brichet just behind him. So Brichet currently 13th, Kangas 14th in the other West Coast, and a drive-through penalty for car number 3, David Kajaya. No surprise there. So Kajaya gets a drive-through for causing the collision with Alex Morgan. So he is allowed to cross the finish line once after receiving it, so he should take that penalty next time around. And a warning from the stewards at the driver's briefing yesterday that if you don't, then you will be black flagged, and if you ignore the black flag, then you will be excluded. Nothing so far on any of the incidents from lap 1, so that may well go to the stewards after the race. You briefly saw in the other Brutal Fish car, the number 17 car, Martin Rieber, currently 16th, and so out of the points, but he will move up into the points because of Kajaya's penalty. Urrutia, you can see there after starting from pit lane, is now up to 19th, but that'll be slim pickings for him. He really could have done with some decent points here. He should have started from the second row of the grid, but all those radiator dramas for various drivers has caused all sorts of issues. So Luca Filippi, that is, followed by Kajaya, followed by Jabo. Now that, by my reckoning, is the second time that Kajaya has crossed the finish line after the drive-through was imposed. Now he does dive up the inside. You do wonder whether the team have told him that he's got a drive-through and he needs to serve it sooner rather than later. Now you'll remember at the Red Bull Ring 3 weeks ago, Tom Coronel was leading race 2, was given a drive-through penalty for the car not being on its wheels at the 5-minute board, so a grid infringement. He didn't take the drive-through. The team told him that they were arguing the case with the race director and the stewards, and so to stay out. And so on that occasion, Coronel received a 30-second penalty after the race, which dropped him all the way down to 18th place. But a discussion at the driver's briefing yesterday, and the steward said, no, that won't be allowed to happen in the future. Once we're concerned and we're convinced of the drive-through, then it'll be issued. You then take the drive-through. If you don't, you get black flagged. And as I was saying earlier, if you ignore the black flag, then you will be excluded. The leading trio then. Gap starting to tighten up. Dan Lloyd leads half a second now ahead of Andreas Beckmann, but Ponciatici half a second behind Beckmann. And after the tussles and the collisions on the first lap, things now starting to settle down and have settled down into a more processional race between these three. Lots of position changes further back. There again, you see Kajaya is currently in 9th place, ahead of Filippi. And once again, Luca Engstler comes into the pits. This has been a torrid race for young Luca. We heard from his father, Franz, earlier on, who won here in World Touring Cars. Kajaya is still out. So what are the stewards going to do? And indeed, I'm seeing on my screen, he is being black flagged for not taking his drive-through penalty. So Kajaya has received a black flag. If he continues to ignore it, that will be bad news for David, and I know he has many, many fans watching in Georgia who won't be happy about their hero getting black flagged, but rules are rules. And the incident with Alex Morgan, very visible. So still no change at the head of the leaderboard. Dan Lloyd leads after that brilliant start and the run down to turn one. Andreas Beckmann flashing his lights. More, I think, to unsettle Dan than as a serious attempt. Although Andreas just looks up the inside. Dan maybe slightly unsettled by the lights. I was going to say he's too experienced to be caught out by something like that. Just ran slightly wide, allowing Andreas to close the gap right up behind the Honda once again. A little over 5 minutes of this race, plus 1 lap remaining. Can Andreas find a way past the Honda? And Kajaya now in the pits. So the message has finally got through. David Kajaya will play no further part in this because no point in coming back out and running around for something like 20th position, which means we can concentrate on the point scoring positions then. Everybody behind Kajaya moves up a place. Filippi up to 9th, Szabo up to 10th, Maxime Potti up to 11th, Brichet up to 12th, Claire up to 13th, Kangas up to 14th, and Martin Rieber now in the points as Maxime Potti just takes a... Oh, sorry, that's Urrutia in the 55, the Audi. Takes a dive up the inside of Abdullah Ali Al-Khelaifi. And so that's 17th place changing hands. Urrutia having come from the back of the grid, or from the pit lane, to 17th, still 2 places away from the points, though. So we run down again to turn 1. And a definite gap opening up now to Nelson Panciatici in 3rd place. A little over a second, in fact, with Coronel 2 seconds or so behind Panciatici. Now, both the Beckmans came here to test during the winter. They've tested at every circuit where TCR Europe competes this year. This was the one that they were happiest with. And they were saying, apparently, that they compared it to Alton Park, of all places in the UK, where they competed in TCR UK last year. I'm not seeing it myself, but that's what they felt with the combination of corners. And an unhappy David talking to Mrs. K, to Mia, and I think the body language says it all. Two-tenths of a second, all that's in it between Lloyd and Beckmann. Can Beckmann find a way past in these last 4 or 5 minutes of this race? Urrutia, by the way, is up to 16th now. If he can get past Martin Rieber, he'll be in the points. Al-Khelaifi 17th, Davidovski 18th, Poussier in 19th. And then you've got the cars that are running, either having retired or limping in and out of the pits like Luca Engstler. Now you really will Andreas to find a way past, but when you've got the likes of Dan Lloyd ahead of you... Oh, and has that just been the moment? Little contact between the pair. Andreas Beckmann moves into the lead. Dan Lloyd just left the door open a fraction, and Nelson Panciatici seizes his chance as well and just pulls through. Dan Lloyd must be kicking himself for that fraction of a second of a mistake, which means Andreas Beckmann moves into the lead, Nelson Panciatici into 2nd place, Dan Lloyd dropping down to 3rd. And fantastic bit of timing by Andreas, who chose his moment, saw the gap, dived for it. Andreas Beckmann snatches the lead with something like 2 minutes plus 1 lap of this race remaining. Brilliant piece of anticipation from Andreas. Just kept Dan under pressure. Dan just ran slightly wide. There it is, look, that little kink as he just repositioned, and Andreas seized the moment. And Panciatici dives from the left to the right, also finds a way past. There's a little touch between them but all fair. And that's the reaction from the Brutal Fish guys. Disbelief. Dan Lloyd was heading for that victory. And so Andreas Beckmann already starting to pull clear of Nelson Pontiatisi. A frustrated, I'm sure, Dan Lloyd now down to third ahead of Tom Coronel. So the way things are at the moment, Hyundai, Honda, and then a run of two Hyundais, Files and Baumann. Gianni Morbidelli is now 7th in the Volkswagen, Matteo Homola 8th, Luca Filippi 9th, 10th is Zoltzabo, 11th is Potti, 12th is Brichet, 13th is Teddy Claret, 14th is Ollie Kangas, Martin Rieber still 15th ahead of Urrutia. And I suspect, with one eye on the clock, the next time our leader, which is now Andreas Beckmann, crosses the start-finish line, it will be to start the final lap. Coronel was the last driver, I think, to leave the paddock earlier. The team's still working when pretty much everybody else had headed out onto the grid. So a major change in the order, just when it looked as though Dan Lloyd was on course to take his first victory in TCR Europe. A momentary lapse, a tiny mistake, just enough to leave Andreas Beckmann through. A lovely bit of racecraft from Andreas Beckmann, and indeed he crosses the start-finish line to start the final lap with a gap of 1.25 seconds over Nelson Pontiatisi. Dan Lloyd still in third place ahead of Tom Coronel, the pair just under a second apart. But it looks as though Andreas Beckmann, driving for Target Competition, will take yet another victory for the team, his first in TCR Europe. I think Pontiatisi too far behind to have any effect on Beckmann, and Lloyd, I think, will stay ahead of Tom Coronel to claim the final podium place. So Sweden will be very happy. There'll be a small corner of the paddock that will be delighted. Frustration for Jessica, getting caught up in that incident on lap 1, but she will be delighted for her brother Andreas. I suspect that M Racing will be pleased too for their second place for Nelson Pontiatisi. And this is the two Peugeots of, that's one of the Clarets. 111 is Teddy, scrapping with Julien Brichet, and that's Maxime Potti, I think, up ahead of them. And in fact, both the Peugeots have passed Potti. That's the scrap for 11th. So Brichet having got past. As round turn 14 for the final time comes our race winner for round 9 of TCR Europe 2019. Andreas Beckmann takes the victory, flashes his lights in pleasure, in jubilation. Nelson Pontiatisi finishes second, third is Dan Lloyd, fourth is Tom Coronel. No surprise, Josh Files finishes fifth ahead of Dominic Baumann. The celebrations already start at Target Competition. Gianni Morbidelli finishes 7th ahead of Matteo Homola, who is 8th. And then a flurry of cars head for the line. Luca Filippi is 9th. Zoltzabo is 10th, Maxime Potti 11th, Brichet is 12th, Teddy Claret is 13th, Kangas is 14th, and 15th is Martin Rieber with Santiago Urrutia. Something like 3/10. That's all it was, separating him from the point-scoring places. So, a good drive from Urrutia, frustrating in the end, but you have to say that the drive of the event, particularly that, picking his moment beautifully, and Andreas Beckmann is come of age in this 9th round of TCR Europe, just when it looked as though Dan Lloyd would be unbeatable. That momentary lapse in concentration allowed Beckmann and Pontiatisi through. So a 1-2 for Hyundai, another 1-2 for them, 3rd and 4th for Honda, 5th and 6th for Hyundai, and then Volkswagen. Best result for them on home ground is 7th for Gianni Morbidelli. Files, I suspect, will be happy with 5th place, particularly with Luca Engstler failing to finish. Brichet also finishes in the points. Matto Homola is in the points also for 8th place. If we get time, we'll take a look at the points positions after this race. Of course, we have a second race to go this weekend, round 10 of the series, at lunchtime tomorrow at 1:30 Central European time. But we still have the podium ceremony and fingers crossed a chance to chat to our delighted race winner, Andreas Beckmann. And we do it all again in a fraction under 24 hours time. So under the podium then, the top 3 cars, Andreas Beckmann, Nelson Ponciatici and Dan Lloyd. The rest of the cars being directed to turn left into the paddock. There goes Coronel. Slight confusion as to which car is going where. I can see Andreas's car, the number 19 car. There is Ponciatici's car, the number 12 Hyundai on the right of your screen. And there is Dan Lloyd's car, the 123 Honda, the Brutal Fish Honda of Dan Lloyd on the left. Andreas pulls into position. Let's see the reaction as he gets out. There's his girlfriend. Fantastic work from Andreas. I think it was only a matter of time. But last year, a mixed program for Andreas and Jessica. Contested TCR Scandinavia, TCR UK, where Andreas won at Croft. Walter Gummerer, the boss. Congratulations from Dan. Give your sister a hug, man. Congratulations from Jessica. And fingers crossed we should hear from our race winner very shortly. But if you're just joining us, where were you? That was an incident-packed beginning to the race, and then it's settled down slightly. There is Nelson Ponciatici. So second place for the M Racing Hyundai. But just when I thought, I'll put my hands up, it was the commentator's curse once again that as things were settling down into what looked like a bit of a procession, that man, Dan Lloyd, who will be bitterly disappointed at that momentary lapse in concentration, allowed Andreas Beckmann and Nelson Ponciatici through. There is confirmation of the race result then. Beckmann takes the victory by 1.79 seconds from Ponciatici. Lloyd is third. Coronel, Files, Baumann, Morbidelli, Homola, Luca Filippi and Jolt Szabo round off the top 10. And behind them, it's Potty, Brichet, Claret, Teddy Claret, that is, Kangas and Reba, who are in the remainder of the point-scoring positions. Urrutia unlucky. Al-Khelaifi finished at least ahead of Davidovsky and Poussier, and then the remainder from Poussier backwards. So Kajaya, Tenka, Engstler, Morgan, Beckmann, Bihel, Magnus, Comte and Jimmy Claret, non-finishers. Right then, let's head down to pit lane and hear from our race winner.
Andreas Beckmann, it happened. You made it.
Yeah, it was a really tough race. Dan did a great start, and I tried to follow him for a long time, but I couldn't really get past. But then in the end, I saw a gap, and he made a mistake, and I went on the inside. So it was really a good move, and I'm really pleased. Thanks to the team and everyone, and to my family and to my sponsors. It was a really great race, and I was so pushing so hard to get past, but he was driving so well in the front, so it was hard to go up to first, but I'm really pleased. So.
But you kept your temper and you stayed there, and when you saw the opportunity, you tried.
Yeah, for sure. I tried to save my tires until then because I knew it was going to be hard in the end when the tires go off so much on this track. But I felt like I still had the tires a little bit alive in the end, so I could make a gap also in the last 2 laps. So it was really good.
Well done. Enjoy the moment.
Thank you very much.
Enjoy the moment indeed. Andreas Beckmann takes his first victory in TCR Europe. What does that do then? Well, it brings Andreas right back up into contention. He gets up into second place now, 48 points behind Josh Files. Brichet is still third. Ponziatisi moves up to fourth. Potty is up to seventh behind Engschler, who drops from second to fifth, and Hommler, who drops from fourth to sixth. But, as I keep saying, there is another round to go tomorrow, and of course, plenty more points on offer. And as we've seen on so many occasions already so far this season, that a bad weekend, or indeed, to the contrary, a brilliant weekend can have a really, really strong effect on the championship positions. Let then us remind ourselves, just ahead of the podium ceremony, of some of the highlights of the first race here at Oschersleben in Germany. A mature drive from Andreas Beckmann, as Alfredo Filippone said in the interview. He kept his temper, he kept his cool, and picked his moment beautifully to get past Dan Lloyd to take the victory. And the champagne, I suspect, will taste particularly sweet. There are our podium finishers. And remember, Dan Lloyd, when he was at West Coast at TCR UK last year, was driver coaching both Andreas and Jessica. And boy, have they come a long way. And that is just a brilliant, brilliant result for Andreas and the team as Dan Lloyd makes his way out onto the podium. There is the Oschersleben mascot, whether he's a pigeon or an ostrich or a duck or whatever you prefer. He's an ever-present fixture here at Oschersleben, and I dare say we'll see him again tomorrow when we line up as Nelson Ponziatisi makes his way out. But listen to the cheer. A popular race winner, Andreas Beckmann.
And the winner team from this race, number one, congratulations on the podium.
And so who will we see coming out to... I think that is Andreas's race engineer. And so the national anthems then.
And the winning team, and for the winner of this race, now the national anthem from Sweden.
The Swedish national anthem, and an emotional moment for Andreas Beckmann. The first win of many, one suspects, in TCR competitions. Took a win in a national series, TCR UK last year, has now taken a win in a regional series, TCR Europe. And who knows what beckons for Andreas in the future.
To the winning team. And now it's time for the prize giving. Target competition.
So, target competition, getting the trophy for the winning team.
Always with a prize now. The second place, congratulations to Nelson Ponziatisi.
Nelson Ponziatisi from M Racing.
Once again.
And actually the oldest man on the podium.
Congratulations to Daniel Lloyd.
So Andreas Beckmann, 23. Nelson Ponziatisi is 30. And Dan Lloyd, 27.
For the photographers in front of you. Also, you're also. Target competition.
The ostrich very cleverly gets out of the way. Remember the trophy. There's the photo, which will be on the various websites and blogs very shortly. And then we have no second race today, and so a little bit of champagne can be consumed. and sprayed, of course, because those race suits, I suspect, will be changed ready for tomorrow. But we are very much underway then for our race action here at Oschersleben. An incident-packed first couple of laps and a well-deserved mature victory for Andreas Beckmann and the Target competition team. That then was race 1, round 9 of TCR Europe 2019 from Oschersleben. We're back tomorrow for race 2 at 1:30 Central European time.